Hi, so please don't count this as part of my allotted time. I was originally just going to present without a video, but then I decided to just utilize the video with the PowerPoint. So it's my first time ever using this video software, so I have no idea what I'm doing. So hopefully it turns out well. And if you could send me your feedback as you would for a presentation, that'd be greatly appreciated. Because just make sure I'm still on the right track. Because I did change my proposal just a little bit after my observations. So my case study took on a new life and it used to be about street people specifically, but now I added mall rats and the elderly into my into made a comparison instead. As you know, this is often what happens when you go out and do your observations and you don't exactly find what you expect. And that's exactly the case here. So I was going to go down to and observe street people in the downtown business core, see how they were treated differently than, say, I was, because I was loitering as well, just as they were. I suspected that I wouldn't, based on my appearance, I wouldn't get approached, whereas they would and asked to leave. And I was actually going to utilize the theories of vocabulary of motives and subterranean values. And that's what I proposed in my proposal, but when I actually went out and did my observations, something a little different happened. I actually found two more disruptive groups, the elderly and a group I came to identify as mall rats. So I ended up looking at those two groups in addition to just street people because I thought it was an interesting contrast. The first theory I looked at in comparing these groups was subterranean values by Matza and Sykes. A set of subterranean values coexisting with, but also contradicting overt or official social values. So essentially, it's okay for the mall rats to be there, the elderly, but yet the street people know. And in my observations, I saw that actually there was an incident where there was what I would describe as mall rats sitting around a table, playing a clapping game, and where an elderly person actually had to go up to them to tell them to be quiet. And neither had actually bought anything in the McDonald's I was sitting in. And it's ironic because a street person was sitting in the corner of the restaurant, observing this, being quite disruptive at all. Yet it's not okay for them to be there, and it's okay for the other two groups. And actually, the street person actually had bought something, whereas the other two groups really didn't. It's okay for some people to do certain things, but others no, because it's somehow they're put into different contexts. Um, we as a society, like when I say society, I mean people in general, seem to deem street people as loitering and unacceptable, but don't mind other social groups doing the same thing. The second theory utilizes vocabulary of motives by Mills, a culturally relevant narratives or stories that make sense of people's actions. So street people seem to deserve our criticism, while the other groups don't. So I looked at it from two different angles. People who justify their motives for uh, criticizing street people in comparison to the other groups, for example, would say how the mall rats, they have a bright future, they're just relaxing. Elderly people, well, it's good that they're getting out and socializing, where street people, they're scaring off shoppers, they're not going to buy anything, making people feel uncomfortable. Whereas mall rats can justify say, oh well, I might buy something to security, or the elderly would probably be offended that security would even be approaching them and justify that they bought enjoying coffee. Whereas street people, they really can't justify have a motive for being there when they're explaining. No matter what they say, it's just going to be the wrong answer. It's not going to be appropriate. The third theory I used to look at these groups is the theory of conspicuous consumption, um, which was originated by Thorsten Veblen. The consumption predicted not on the satisfaction of physical needs, but the attainment of status. And that's something that the mall rats know all about, because they're at that age where a lot of advertising campaigns are aimed at them. They are trying to enhance their identities and be like their friends, and always creating new identities to meet each fad. Um, they always want the newest leisure items. They want to participate in conspicuous consumption. They don't know what it is, but they want to participate. And they're always after these new identities. The elderly, they're kind of past that. They're minimalist, but they have children to shop for and grandchildren. Whereas street people, they're vilified because they assume they're not going to buy anything and participate in this and that's the action that's expected of them within this general geographical area of the downtown core. And asking people for money isn't considered a legitimate consumption. So in conclusion, it's according to subterranean values applied to this case, it's okay for the mall rats and the elderly to loiter, but it's not okay for street people because they're put into a different context, and it's made out to be their loitering is made out to be a deviant activity. Whereas in terms of vocabulary of motives, the mall rats and the elderly have much more acceptable motives for loitering, whereas street people, they're seen as not being, they should be doing something productive, they're not being productive enough, they should get a job. In terms of conspicuous consumption, people assume, the business owners assume street people aren't going to buy anything, whereas they think the elderly might, and certainly the mall rats will. And as a result, there's a lot of discrimination happening.